City this morning. Good morning to you all. Your equity market shaping up as follows. Positive on the S&P 500 at 41.92, let's call it 41.91. Up about 6 points to the S&P, advancing a little more than 1/10%. Similar story on the Russell, on the Nasdaq. That was the opening bell. Switch up the board and get to the bond market. Your 10-year yield shaping up as follows in America. Your Treasury yield 156.55. Yields up almost a basis point after moving lower through much of yesterday's session. On the Federal Reserve, this from Adam Ruskin at Deutsche Bank in the last 10 minutes or so. Oh, ye of little faith has turned into oh, ye of so much Fed faith. One to think about. Euro dollar 122.22 and down about 0.2% on that currency pair. Elsewhere in crude, we are negative 0.8% at 65.54 on WTI. That's the Wednesday morning price action. Let's peel back the session just a little bit in the early part. Here's Abby.
John, it seems that tech investors have just a little bit of faith because we're now on pace for our third up day in a row. That's the first time we've seen that in more than a month for the NASDAQ 100. So helping out those gains, the likes of Apple and Amazon. And of course, Amazon has announced that deal to buy MGM Studios for $8.45 billion. But we also see that the reopening trade, the travel trade is working as well, and optimism that folks are going to be getting back out there in the world in a big way. So Royal Caribbean and American Airlines are higher. Relative to retail and another part of the reopening trade, a mixed bag, but more to the green. Nordstrom down 8%. They posted a much wider loss than expected, so the stock getting punished. Urban Outfitters, on the other hand, absolutely soaring. They posted a huge top and bottom line beat. And Dick's Sporting Goods also posted a huge top and bottom line beat. They put up $3.79 on the bottom line, beating by 228% on $2.91 billion. That's a 31% beat. That's a big way of saying that they really put up a massive beat. And then finally, we once again would be remiss if we did not take a look at the crypto space. So take a look at Bitcoin and Ethereum, both soaring after yesterday's mild drop. And then Riot Blockchain and Marathon Digital Holdings up in line with the crypto space and the gains that we're seeing for those cryptocurrencies, John.
Abby, thank you. In the early part of the session, then about 2 minutes in, we are positive by 0.2% on the S&P 500. Materials, bottom of the pile, negative about 0.1%. The consumer discretionary sector up 0.4%. Looking through the industry groups, information technology near the top of the pile, up about 1/3%. Tech shares regaining their footing just a little bit, outperforming over the last week after weighing on the S&P 500 over much of the last month. For more on this, let's bring in Bloomberg's Katie Greifeld. Hey, Katie.
Hey, John. Well, stocks are off to a strong start this year, but they'd be even stronger if not for big tech. If you look at the S&P 500, it's up nearly 12% year to date. But if you look at the equal weighted version of that index where Apple and Under Armour have the same weight, it's nearly 17% higher, over 17% higher. Viewed another way, growth names, which tend to be tech companies, they're close to 8% higher this year, a respectable gain, but value is crushing that up almost 16%. Now, driving value higher, John, is a rapidly reopening economy. Just in the past 2 weeks, travel names have cruised about 8% higher. Again, tech is holding its own, but the real winners have been your airlines and hotels, and Boeing is beating them all, rallying nearly 9% just in the past 2 weeks as orders for its 737 MAX pile up. And of course, with all this talk of a reopening economy, you'd expect to see inflation anxiety start to resurface, but we heard from 4 Fed officials this week, all singing the same tune, that price pressures are unlikely to stick around longer term. And the bond market is showing the same thing. If you look at the inverted 30-year to 2-year break-even spread, it shows that traders also expect inflation to fizzle here. So transitory is still the key word, John.
Katie Greifeld on the bond market and what's happening in the equity market as well. Katie, thank you. UBS's Mark Haefele seeing room to run in the reflation trade. He writes the following, quote, while bouts of treasury market volatility may occasionally revive pandemic-era mega-cap outperformance, we believe economic reopenings and rising inflation remain the most potent near-term drivers for global markets. Joining us now is Dan Suzuki of RB Advisors and BlackRock's Tony DeSpirito. Dan, I get a feeling you agree with Mr. Haefele over at UBS.
Yeah, John, it's great to see you, and it's great to see Katie on the show as well. Yeah, I completely agree with that comment. And if you look where we are, I mean, you look at what's happening in the markets, I think what's interesting is with all these ups and downs, the market is essentially flat from mid-April and flat from a couple weeks ago, but very different rotations you see over those different periods. Over the last couple months, you've seen this reflation story come through, where anything that benefits from rising growth, reopening, and inflation has done very well at the expense of the secular growth names. But over the past couple weeks, where we've also been flat, the rotation's really been one of a more defensive one. And I think that speaks to sort of, this idea that this is as good as it gets. I don't think it's as good as it gets. I think that things are going to continue to improve, and there's a big runway for recovery. So I think that reflation reopening story is still intact.
We'll come to that runway in just a second. Tony, just a line of yours that pops off the page for me. Positioning for an economic recovery while seeking to protect capital from potential bouts of volatility. Is that what you're looking for deeper into the summer, Tony?
I do expect bouts of volatility. Look, I think we are in store for a very massive recovery for a variety of reasons, whether it's pent-up demand, whether it's fiscal and monetary policy, which is quite stimulative, the vaccine themselves, and the fact that consumers are in really great shape, unlike most recoveries from recessions where consumers are licking their wounds, they're repairing their balance sheets. Think about how underwater they were on their homes back at the end of global financial crisis. Compare that to today. So I do see a big economic boom, but it's not without risks. Risks about inflation, and there will be this debate about, we will see higher reported inflation, and then the question will be, is it transitory or is it something more durable? And I think the market will have real questions about that, and will worry about that, and that in and of itself will create bouts of volatility in the market.
So, Tony, you're talking about this barbell approach, balance. Is that key?
I do think it's key. And I'll take two sectors, tech on one hand and financials on the other. Tech, I think, has great long-term fundamentals, good growth, good business models. And in fact, they've become a lot more staple-like. And we've talked about that before. I think of tech as the new staples. They're so integral, so mission-critical to both enterprises and individual consumers that you just don't stop spending in a recession. And we saw that in spades last year. So I think that's a good long-term investment. Now, there are some areas of that sector where the valuations are high. And I think that can be a problem, particularly in a time of rising inflation and a time of rising rates. But there's the balance of banks and financials, for example, where they are one of the few sectors that would actually benefit from rising inflation and rising rates, and yet their valuations are still very discounted. I mean, we're buying banks at 12, 13 times earnings versus a market at about 22 times earnings. That's a really big discount, and it's one of the cheapest ways to hedge inflation risk that I can find.
Dan Suzuki, build on that for us. The barbell approach over at BlackRock, a bit more balanced. Why you might suggest more of a cyclical tilt for the time being?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with, a lot of what Tony was talking about. I think a lot of what he's saying makes sense. I just think that right now, with the big profits pickup that we're seeing, and probably the biggest profit pickup in a decade, that you really want to own the stuff that's going to benefit the most from that pickup and that recovery, which is the more cyclical areas of the economy. Now, I think Tony's got a great point that, there are parts of tech that have good fundamentals, but the problem is what are the valuations you're paying for those fundamentals, and where, how much is that being boosted by sentiment right now? So I think, there are areas that are going to benefit from the pickup in the tech sector as well. I just think you're getting better bang for your buck, in other areas where sentiment isn't so, hyped up or frothy.
Dan, I've become familiar with various views of each and every house on Wall Street, and for you and the team over at RB right now, you're just making the argument that this persists in a way that some people don't think it will. I think the consensus view still, Dan, and you can push back by all means, this is just my interpretation of conversations I have on a daily basis, is that we have this big boom this year, then we return to trend growth of in and around 2%, and with that, we make this transition away from cyclical outperformance and back to the growth names, back to the big tech stories of yesteryear and the dominant names of the last decade. And Dan, you push back against that, and every time you come on, I'm just trying to understand with better clarity why.
Yeah, Jonathan, I think you're right about where the consensus sits today. I think, basically people invest in the rearview mirror. People invest the way they expect, what they've seen over the past 5-10 years. And that's exactly what we've seen. No matter what's happened, you sort of reverted to this, low inflation, low growth world. I think that, the secular dynamics, are shifting right now. I mean, we're seeing a lot of things, macro factors that are off the charts right now. Liquidity is off the charts right now. Stimulus is off the charts. Deficits are off the charts right now. And so with all these different things that are happening in the face of this, this global growth backdrop that has plenty of room to recover, I think that you're creating this formula, for a persistently stronger than expected growth environment. And I think that the Fed, the Fed policy aspect has a big factor to play here. Over the last 30 or 40 years, every time the economy has been able to run, better than people thought, the Fed stepped in and put the brakes on and basically put us into a recession. They're telling us with all their might that they don't want to do that, and they're going to lag more than they historically have been. And I think that's just, they're going to get what they asked for. Things are going to run hotter than people expect.
Tony, just a final word here. Do you agree with that?
Well, so in the long run, economic growth is limited by productivity growth and population growth, and I don't see how those two have changed over the last several years. If anything, maybe on the population side, growth has slowed even further. So I think the long-term growth rate of the economy hasn't changed. So I think in the short run, yes, I think you're going to get a very powerful upcycle because of all the stimulus and pent-up demand. But then eventually that will roll over, and I think you have to be prepared as an investor for that ultimate event. The other thing I'd say is a great sector that kind of also blends the two is med tech, right? You have the powerful disruption forces, the powerful innovation forces going on, but yet you also have a cyclical aspect where a lot of procedures were deferred last year, and so you have a catch-up effect. And so that's an interesting way, I think, for investors to play both sides of it, get the long-term innovation, disruption, and the cyclical benefit.
Two parts to that answer, and Dan Suzuki, I know you'll be itching to get back in on the first part, so I'll let you do that now.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say, relative to Tony's point is, I think that's totally right with respect to real growth. Real growth is limited by those factors you mentioned, but what I'm talking about here is nominal growth. I think nominal growth is we're setting up for a period of much faster than expected nominal growth, and that's going to have big implications for people's portfolios, implications that we really haven't seen for the last couple of decades, and that's why we're positioned for that sort of rising nominal growth, rising inflationary environment.
We'll continue the conversation. Dan Suzuki, Tony DeSpirito, sticking with us about 11, 12 minutes into the session with your movers at the market desk. Here's Abby.
John, let's tackle the inflation debate from a different angle, because we do have gold rallying on the day, really consistent with what we've had over the last few weeks. So today we have the gold miners solidly higher. In addition, we have the Bitcoin, the blockchain crypto space also higher. If you buy into the idea that crypto is an inflation hedge, gold is traditionally an inflation hedge, these markets are suggesting or are nervous about inflation. On the other hand, if we take a look at big tech, up for 3 days in a row, the first time we've seen that since the beginning of April. Well, we actually have Microsoft flipping lower, Apple barely higher, and Amazon is officially a discretionary. So a little bit of a mixed bag here in terms of whether there's inflation on the screen or not in the near term. But Amazon, of course, is also buying MGM for $8.45 billion in a bid for content. And then finally, rounding it out where we clearly have inflation, asset inflation, the meme stocks. We have GameStop up for a 5th day in a row on gaining 41% over that time period, and AMC up for a 3rd day, 52% gains over that time period. The short interest on these stocks, John, very respectable at this point, closer to 20% as opposed to the 120% back in January. But nonetheless, it seems that we do have that squeeze play back in action.
Abby, thank you. Coming up, Wall Street heading to Capitol Hill, the C-suite preparing to testify before the Senate Banking Committee. That conversation up next with BlackRock's Tony DeSpirito and Dan Suzuki of RB Advisors. We'll get the view on Wall Street from Bloomberg's Shanani Basso. That's next. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg has enhanced search on the terminal to deliver what you need when you need it. Now, you can simply type phrases in everyday English in the command line. Compare financials, find people, analyze markets. You can enter phrases or ask questions. What do you want to know today? Ask a question or visit SearchGo to find answers now. Access the financial world on demand. Hear from leading economists, policymakers, and industry experts via live and on-demand webinars, only from Bloomberg. Start exploring to see what's moving the markets.
Hey traders, hello again. We closed position on euro, as you can see, short position. We've been holding since from 11:20, 11:15. Okay, position closed at 122.32. So all of you guys who decided to follow this trade, who decided to copy my trade, well done. We made 10 pips. In our case, 1 pip equals 100 pounds, so we made 1,000 pounds. For you guys, you made whatever broker pays you per pip. Okay, great, well done. If you want to, for new people, if you want to find out how we trade, to find more information about our strategy, you need to go to company.co.uk. Okay, guys. I'll speak to you later. Let's move on. Let's move on and look like I'm looking closer to Bitcoin. So if you're about to trade Bitcoin, I probably will place order soon. So stay tuned in. Okay? I'll speak to you later.
We also have a recognition here of how much the banks have played as a big role when it came to the PPP program, access to credit. But again, Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan saying that there needs to be more done, highlighting his work, $30 billion commitment here with minority-owned institutions and minority communities. These lawmakers, John, will be very concerned as the eviction moratoriums run out and what their communities will have to pay at the end of the day and whether many will be left holding the bag. The tone is what we will be watching for. Constructive or hostile, it is the first time we will be seeing these bank CEOs meet a Senate that is dominated by the Democrats as well as the White House.
I imagine it'll be the latter and not the former, but that's just a guess, Shanali. Just quickly on Senator Warren, on financial. Yeah. This is what she had to say to the Fed's Randy Quarles. Our financial system will be safer when you are gone. I urge President Biden to fill your role with someone who will actually keep our financial system safe. Shanali, can you weigh in on that? What's that about?
Yes, so between Randy Quarles and between this new age of Biden regulators, such as, everybody from the Fed to the OCC to the CFPB, we are expecting more regulation. And so when you've seen major market hiccups and banks lose millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, almost billions of dollars, there's a big question as to whether regulators in the past have had their eye off the ball.
Shanali, thank you. With us now is BlackRock's Tony DeSpirito and Dan Suzuki of RB Advisors. I know you both like the financials here. Just in terms of the regulatory environment at the moment, Tony, are you hearing the same old thing, or does this sound different?
So, look, I think the banks, we've gone through a period of tremendous re-regulation over the last decade or so, and it's mostly been positive in the sense that banks are now safer and sounder than they've ever been before. Partially on the asset side, they're taking less risky loans, and then also very measurably on the capital side, where they have a lot more capital than they had prior to the financial crisis, 60, 70, 80% more capital. And so I think that's actually been a good result for the banks in that they're safer and sounder than they've ever been. And to the extent that the pandemic was a stress test for the banks, they really passed with flying colors. And I think we're now at a point where they're going to start increasing their buybacks, increasing their dividends post the June CCAR DFAST process. So I actually think we're in good shape. And I think the regulatory issues going forward are a lot smaller and less financially relevant than the regulatory issues over the last decade.
Dan Suzuki, do you think they would have passed with flying colours without the unprecedented fiscal assistance this economy had over the last 12 months?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with what Tony said. Again, I do think that they would have passed maybe with less flying colors, given they just would have had more credit losses on their books. But I think they would have persevered very, very well, given how well capitalized they are. You know, I think that, you know, I also agree with Tony that, you know, I'm not looking to see a lot come out of this. I think it's going to be more of a you know, grandstanding.
Theater. It's always theater, Dan.
And focus less on profits and more on social issues. But one thing I'll say though, on the regulatory front, is that, you know, what they need to understand is what's happened over the past decade post-financial crisis is that by putting extra regulations on the financial sector, you know, and Jamie Dimon wrote about this in his letter, you know, it's created, you know, competitive advantage for the non-bank, you know, financials. And by doing so, you're actually moving a lot of the risk outside of the banks where they're actually well monitored and regulated. And that can ultimately, you know, cause some increased risk down the line.
Dan Suzuki.
Sorry to cut you off.
Got to leave it there, Dan. Always good to catch you up. I think I cut you off. Don't worry about it. Dan Suzuki and Tony DeSpirito. Tony from BlackRock. Thank you, gents. Appreciate it. Let's get you some sector price action. Your equity market is doing okay. No big moves this morning. With your stock movers, your sector price action, here's our stocks editor, Dave Wilson.
Thanks, John. Really kind of a mixed bag among the 11 main industry groups in the S&P 500. At the moment, you're looking at 5 up, 6 down. The standout, really, the consumer discretionary category, and a lot of that is Amazon.com finally clinching that deal to buy the film studio Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and Ford Motor planning to increase its investment in electric vehicles. So you put those two things together, that's largely responsible for the fact that the consumer discretionary group is the best performer among the 11 main groups. That said, you're getting some assistance from the cruise lines, notably Royal Caribbean. I mean, they received clearance from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to run a test voyage out of Miami starting next month on one of its ships. And, you know, cruise lines, if you look at them, you can't really focus in so much with the S&P 500, but there is a group, hotels, restaurants, and leisure, and that's where the cruise lines show up. You see, it's been beating the S&P 500 this year. Royal Caribbean, actually the worst performer of the 3 cruise lines in the index. So, you know, Carnival kind of leading the way, then Norwegian. Though today, Royal Caribbean's kind of making up some of what it lost, or at least kind of playing catch up to its peers, thanks to this CDC authorization.
Dave, thank you. Your S&P 500 unchanged. Up next, your trading diary. This is Bloomberg.
BSO Now is your online home for brand new Boston Symphony Orchestra and Boston Pops performances. Discover new releases each week that include behind-the-scenes storytelling with conductors including music director Andres Nelsons, guest composers and musicians, plus critically acclaimed archival concerts and more. Visit bso.org/now, where the music plays on. BSO season sponsored by Bank of America.
I think what we've seen during this period of time is that communicating via video is not a fad. We are using it in all aspects of our lives, for work, for learning, for communicating, for staying in touch.
A little more than 25 minutes into the session from New York City this morning. Good morning. Here's your equity market, unchanged on the S&P. Outperformance on the small caps. We advance on the Russell by 0.9%, on a NASDAQ by 1/3%. That's the price action. Here's your trading diary. A look at some of the market-moving events through the day, maybe. Wall Street CEOs testifying on Capitol Hill at the top of the hour. The Fed's Randy Quayle speaking again later this afternoon. Another round of claims and a second read on US GDP coming on Thursday. And finally on Friday, we get Eurozone consumer confidence. Rounding out the week. From New York City for our audience worldwide, this was the countdown to the open. Continue the conversation on Twitter at Ferro TV. This is Bloomberg.
We're now in the early stages of a sustainability revolution.
The battery problem may be the biggest unsolved problem in all of technology.
Every time the United States has done great transformative things, there's been a partnership between government and the private sector.
With a willing partner to ensure competitiveness and draw in investment in the United States, Canada's going to be able to be even more ambitious.
The objective for Glasgow, first and foremost, is to keep that 1.5 degree temperature rise within reach.
The train has left the station. Investors care about it. People who work inside of corporate America care about these issues. And certainly we see that with just the broader community.
There's not enough tax in the world for private sector to pay for all of this. It's going to have to be a public-private partnership.
Okay, traders, I'm going to place a order to sell short Bitcoin. Okay, I'm going to place the order to sell at 39,371. If you're looking to trade Bitcoin, here is your chance. Follow my trade and we'll finish this trade together. So 39,371. This is the price I'm going to sell. Please, I want to remind you that we trade Bitcoin and all pairs on margin. In fact, we trade CFDs, contract for difference. So in your case, it's all about how do you trade. You can buy CFDs, you can buy E-minis, you can buy other securities, you can buy many derivatives these days. So it's all about how much you want to spend per contract. Yes? So right now I'm going to sell short Bitcoin. And if you're looking to copy this trade, you still have time. So it will take probably a while because these days Bitcoin kind of volatile. So that's why I'm trying to place order quite before and in the distance from the actual price. Okay, I'll speak to you later.
And when you look outside of the San Juan area, you can go 15 minutes from here and find areas that are devastated. I'm working on the devastated side.
Today, he's put together a boots-on-the-ground mission to provide medical care to some of the island's most isolated and vulnerable residents. Steve Berenbaum is one of Anderson's business associates. He offered an extra car and a set of hands.
So we received an initial report from a nurse that was out in the area. We're headed to the northeast region of Utuado for some people that are in need of urgent medical assistance.
Dr. Sally Priester is a physician from San Juan. She filled a van with medical supplies at her own expense and brought along a team of nurses. Google Maps estimated our first destination to be a 90-minute drive. But it didn't account for obstacles like this. Our first stop was the home of an 82-year-old blind Vietnam veteran. His roof was blown off by the storm, and he's been living alone in a back shed for nearly 2 months.
His cane actually got broken in the storm, so he's limited mobility. He has a number of medical ailments. Dr. Priester's having a look at him. We called the VA. They're going to get him set up with what he needs, get him stabilized so he can then be transported either to an evacuation center or off the island. It's when the chain gets broken, when those families that are connected to them leave the island or take off, these guys get left at the end of the road, and it's tough.
FEMA was not officially part of Robert's team, and their arrival caught everyone by surprise. Their job here was to survey and report back to their superiors, and did not come with medical aid of any kind.
People think that FEMA is there to hand out bottles of water, and it's not what they do. FEMA has a role to play. They have a very specific role. They bring in ships, they bring in airplanes, they bring in tractor trailers with pallets of things. But they're a big machine, and there's gaps in that thing. And you're seeing one of the gaps here, and we help fill that role. These guys are in a bad situation before, and now they're struggling for real basic things. One of the risks that you run is people going from fear to hopelessness. Those are the folks that we're trying to reach.
And how are they reached? How are they even found?
Word of mouth, mostly.
And what's your role in all this?
Ghost in the machine. I'm lucky enough to be able to communicate with folks in FEMA, the state of Puerto Rico.
For a ghost, Robert makes his presence well known. Not only was he the de facto leader of the mission, now with FEMA in tow, he created his own maps to survey storm damage.
So we're right here.
And delivered them to FEMA HQ free of charge.
I have pretty good reach.
Perhaps that's how he managed to earn himself a coveted FEMA badge without actually working for them. And it's these relationships that allow him to operate more efficiently than an NGO or a government agency.
We're able to resolve problems at a different level.
Our next stop was on a mountaintop, a family of 11 struggling to care for their special needs brother in what was left of their house.
Probably we are the first health team to come and visit this family.
Muy bien, todo muy bien.
The patient has Down syndrome. He is all day in bed. The difficulty with this is the patient cannot be alone. The most important thing is that you need to take care of the chronic disease besides disability, because they have been not going to a doctor, and no doctor has come in here yet.
So we need a refill of this medication.
After maybe 54 days, it's not getting better. And the only way that you can be able to see that is coming to the ground, drive, and see the people and talk to the people.
You can see San Juan from here, but you can't get there. It's like the Emerald City.
On this stop, we caught word that a man living alone at the edge of the jungle was in need of care.
So we decided to take a little detour, come up here and check out and see what's going on. One of the challenges is to find those people that are at the end of these roads that need help.
¿Pero por qué estás solo? ¿Por qué estás por acá tan solo? I'm asking about why he's alone right here. He said things of life happens. Yeah, I'm here by myself.
So ¿dónde vive acá? En la parte de...
This is not a job. To do this, you need to have passion for what you can do. You're not going to get paid.
It's said in disaster response and emergency response that the real first responders are your neighbors. You don't need to wait for a lucrative FEMA contract to go out and do good and to help the community.
In the end, do you feel like you're making a difference?
Lives you touch and people that you can affect. I don't really think about it in those terms.
But why do you do it?
It helps me sleep at night. I think it's as much for the people that are going out to help and do things as it is for the people that you affect.
Whether out of altruism, or the lure of a paid gig, or some mixture of the two, Anderson hopes to stay here to help shape Puerto Rico's future.
Puerto Rico's essentially been a colony for 400 years. It was treated poorly by the Spanish. It was not treated well by the United States when they first got here. Puerto Rico can continue in the way that it's always been, or Puerto Rico can rebuild itself like nothing that's ever been. And we have to do everything we can to make that real. That's the bottom line.
When I met him first online, I found him to be really sweet. I think I was the one who was talking for an hour. He was just listening.
When we met, I saw her. She was beautiful, intelligent, and kind, which was, something that I was looking for.
Anshu and Sumit are one of about 12 million couples that get married in India every year. Unlike their parents' generation, they're not from two close villages, but from two cities on opposite sides of the country. And their love didn't start through community matchmaking, marriage brokers, or classified ads in newspapers, but began online.
So we met through jeevansati.com. So it's basically an online portal where we have detailed profile of different grooms and brides.
It makes a lot of remote profiles who are located in distant areas more accessible.
Thanks to growing internet and smartphone usage, matrimony websites and apps in India are starting to disrupt the matchmaking industry. More and more people are finding their partners at the click of a mouse. jeevansati.com, where Anshu and Sumit met, is one of the biggest players. Young Indians looking for love set up profiles including their caste and horoscope, but their criteria for choosing spouses appears to be changing.
We have seen the shift from traditional caste community conservative parameters to something like which is more focused on education, employment.
Anshu and Sumit's marriage was initiated by their parents, but modern Indian couples like them have more input than previous generations.
We looked up to them to agree for the proposal, but it was primarily our decision that we wanted to be with each other.
So what's the emoji you use the most to send to each other?
So there's a bear, which basically we use for indicating a hug.
Yeah, that's our language basically, bear icon for a hug.
Time flies when you're in love, and just 1.5 months after they first met online, the couple got engaged. They decided to hold their wedding less than 3 months later. But planning a traditional Hindu wedding on such short notice is no easy task. The massive event usually lasts 3 days, has various ceremonies and celebrations, and involves the entire two families and hundreds of guests. Luckily, there are websites and apps for that.
We searched online, we got in touch with Wedding Brigade, and they helped us finalize the venue. And it makes the search faster and efficient.
Startups like the Wedding Brigade are challenging traditional wedding planners in this $50 billion industry. It provides various services from booking banquet venues to buying wedding gowns. The website makes money by charging commission from vendors.
People don't want to be limited to what is available around them. They want to know the entire range of options available before making a decision. And now it's easy to find almost everything on one portal.
Anshu and Sumit are officially married in a ritual that has gone on for thousands of years, but their love started in a very new way. Technologies might be changing the way couples meet, date, and get married in India, but they're definitely not changing everything.
The technology was only the first level help that we could get to find each other. Everything else was like very humanly and emotions and feelings based.
Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren has become a symbol of everything the Republican Party stands against.
Everyone gets a right to basic health care. We need strong oversight of these banks.
A legal scholar and a consumer advocate turned politician, Warren has branded herself as a champion of the working class and made a career out of standing up to big business. While rumors of a 2020 presidency bid remain just that,
I'm not running for president.
her Senate seat is up for re-election in 2018, and Republicans are already pumping millions into super PACs to defeat her. This is the story of how a law professor and politician came to be seen as the biggest threat to Republican values and the greatest hope for progressive America. Elizabeth Warren was born Elizabeth Ann Herron, the youngest of 3 siblings, on June 22, 1949, in Oklahoma City to middle-class parents. After waiting tables to help her family pay the bills, Warren became a star on the high school debate team. She landed a scholarship to George Washington University at the age of 16, but 2 years later dropped out to marry her high school sweetheart, Jim Warren. By 1980, Warren was a mother of 2, divorced and remarried, had earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Houston, a juris degree from Rutgers, and practicing law in New Jersey. Warren then went on to become an influential law professor, teaching, lecturing, and publishing highly cited work on bankruptcy and commercial law at 7 universities around the country, eventually settling at Harvard Law School. But Warren wasn't always a liberal lion.
Elizabeth Warren used to be a Republican, actually.
That's Stephen Dennis.
I'm a Senate reporter for Bloomberg. Around the time that Elizabeth Warren switched parties, she became a fierce opponent of a Republican drive to make it much harder to file for bankruptcy. She fought that for a decade. It ended up passing anyways.
While her efforts ultimately failed, her warning calls were heard in 2008.
We're in the midst of a serious financial crisis. Our entire economy is in danger, and without immediate action by Congress, America could slip into a financial panic, and a distressing scenario would unfold.
Professor Warren was tapped to help with oversight in the government bailout.
She would excoriate bankers and their bonuses and their practices.
Why should the U.S. taxpayer alone carry Citi?
She proposed a series of tough regulations, which became the basis for much of the Dodd-Frank financial law that we have today. That sort of catapulted her to national stardom, particularly among the progressive left.
Encouraged by her newfound notoriety, Warren declared her bid for the U.S. Senate on September 14, 2011. During the race, her opponent Scott Brown tried to derail Warren by accusing her of falsely claiming Native American heritage, a controversy that earned her the nickname Pocahontas. Nevertheless, she was victorious and won the Senate seat by a comfortable margin. She used her new tenure to challenge everyone, from banking regulators and Treasury officials to members of Wall Street and Congress.
I'm really concerned that too big to fail has become too big for trial. We need tough new laws to hold corporate executives personally accountable. No one should be above the law.
She called for Wells Fargo CEO John Stump to resign for fraud, introduced the Bank on Student Loans Fairness Act, and reintroduced the 21st Century Glass-Steagall Act. In 2016, after staying silent during the Democratic primary battle, Warren finally endorsed Hillary Clinton and had some harsh words for candidate Trump.
Donald Trump is a loud, nasty, thin-skinned fraud who has never risked anything for anyone, and that is just one of the many reasons he will never be president of the United States.
But she was wrong.
The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer.
Warren wasted no time resisting Trump's agenda.
Have you ever managed or overseen a $1 trillion loan program?
I have not.
How about a $1 billion loan program?
I have not.
Okay. In the Donald Trump era, Elizabeth Warren has been playing defense and trying to prevent Donald Trump and his cabinet appointees from rolling back protections that she helped enact.
Warren actually found herself rebuked by Mitch McConnell for reading a letter by Coretta Scott King about Jeff Sessions' record on racism during his confirmation.
She was warned. She was given an explanation. Nevertheless, she persisted.
That moment became something that's on T-shirts, bumper stickers, slogans, and that really galvanized a lot of support for her. It's been very hard for Republicans to get much of anything done this year, and that's at least in part to this resistance movement that Elizabeth Warren has helped champion.
We are here to fight back.
Enough of Elizabeth Warren. Like you.
Millions of dollars are being funneled to defeat Warren in the midterm elections in 2018. But it's the rumors of a 2020 presidential bid that has further prompted powerful donors to fund her opposition, often using the same playbook of constant and ruthless ad campaigns that many believe helped Trump win in 2016. It's anyone's guess if she will endure what Hillary could not.
You know, the question for Elizabeth Warren is whether she can go from being a liberal firebrand to somebody who can regularly get 60 votes for initiatives in the Senate and 218 in the House and drive an agenda, and whether she can bring together coalitions for political victories. That's the challenge, and we'll see what happens.
Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, has made some powerful opponents.
He doesn't know me, never met me, doesn't know what I'm all about. I think they're very rude statements, and frankly, tell him I will remember those statements.
My message to Donald Trump and his team is that, your views of Islam are ignorant.
He's the first Muslim mayor of a major Western capital and proud of it. This is how Sadiq Khan went from the son of Pakistani immigrants to a lawyer, lawmaker, and now the mayor of London. Khan's parents emigrated from Pakistan. His father was a bus driver, his mother a stay-at-home seamstress. The 10-strong Khan family squeezed into a 3-bedroom flat in South London. He wanted to be a dentist, but TV in the 1980s convinced him otherwise.
Objection!
LA law, with its swagger and ill-fitting suits, caught Khan's eye. He graduated in 1991 with a degree in law from North London University and joined a human rights firm. Khan worked a number of high-profile cases, often clashing with London's Metropolitan Police Force. But he had bigger political ambitions.
This is what being a new MP is like, squatting on a bench in the absence of an office, dealing with letters from constituents.
Reports are just coming in of an explosion here in London.
And there's just explosions, and then it was just smoke everywhere.
Everyone's just asking what's happened.
Only 2 months after Khan entered the Commons as a Member of Parliament, London was attacked by Islamist extremists.
That day will stay with me for the rest of my life.
He spoke out against the attacks both as a London MP and as a Muslim.
He has been very clear about his opposition to violence, opposition to terrorism, and has set out to make the case for a more open and peaceful Islam.
That's Thomas Penny, one of Bloomberg's Westminster correspondents.
Here is a man who is a Muslim, and he is standing up and being open and straightforward and being clear that the problem here is not Islam, but it's Islamic extremism.
In 2015, a decade after the attacks, Khan ran for mayor of London, and his faith was back in the headlines. His opponent, Zach Goldsmith, trying to link Khan to radical Islam.
The debate got again personal and nasty. The Goldsmith camp has called Khan extreme and accused him of associating with, quote, those who seek to do our police and capital harm.
It's a pattern of behaviour.
Even the former Prime Minister David Cameron repeated the allegations.
He shared a platform with Sajil Shahid, the man who trained the ringleader of the 7/7 attacks and accused the United States of bringing 9/11 on themselves.
But the smears didn't stick.
Zach Goldsmith ran a very negative campaign that was based on what people knew was a lie.
This election was not without controversy. And I'm so proud that London has today chosen hope over fear and unity over division.
After taking the mayor's office with a comfortable majority, Khan has brought a business-like efficiency to the role, scrapping expensive vanity projects like the Garden Bridge and the new Routemaster buses, which cost £350,000 each. The former lawyer who used to fight the police in court is now praised for his close relationship with them.
I was talking to a very senior police officer in the Metropolitan Police who said there was a sea change when he went into City Hall, and the police were saying how much they welcomed this because they knew where they stood and it was more straightforward to work with. So he works like a lawyer, he works like a government minister.
Khan's kept his faith at the fore. He's an outspoken voice for moderate Muslims across the world.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
Now, by giving the impression that Islam and the West are incompatible, you're playing into the hands of the extremists.
The ongoing spat between Khan and US President Donald Trump escalated when Trump went after Khan, misquoting him on Twitter just hours after the terrorist attacks of June 3rd, 2017. Khan's now one of the most prominent Labour politicians in the UK. In fact, a recent poll of Londoners found Khan was more trusted to keep the country safe from terrorism than the Prime Minister or the Labour leader. His story of going from the son of an immigrant bus driver to the mayor of one of the greatest cities in the world plays well with Londoners. But can he appeal to the rest of the nation? Has Khan got his eye on the top job? And is the UK ready for a Muslim prime minister?
What does it take to change the world? A big army? A cure to a pandemic? A revolution? All of these take either a lot of people, thousands of hours, or massive amounts of space. But for Julian Assange, all he needs is one room, an internet connection, and the world will listen. Assange is located here, and more specifically, right here. And from that location, he's posted government secrets, classified documents, and leaked emails from some of the world's most powerful people. And in doing so, has been labeled a hero, a villain, a nihilist, and everything in between. This is how an Australian programmer sequestered in the Ecuadorian embassy in London became one of the most influential and notorious people in the world. Born in 1971 in Townsville, Australia, Assange has always been on the move. Living in over 30 homes by the time he was in his mid-teens, Assange, along with his mother and half-brother, finally settled down in Melbourne. His introduction to hacking started at 16 when he was given a Commodore 64, which he attached to a modem. He attended the University of Melbourne, where he studied programming, physics, and mathematics. He never graduated, but that doesn't mean he didn't get an education. By 1991, Assange hacked into the Pentagon, U.S. Navy, and other branches of the U.S. government. In 1996, he was caught by the Australian Federal Police and charged with over 30 counts of hacking and computer-related crimes. He didn't get any jail time, but he was fined $2,100.
I think the first taste of what would come later was the hacking that he did as a young programmer, and that really sort of foreshadowed a healthy skepticism of the use and abuse of technology by governments.
That's Vernon Silver.
I'm a reporter for Bloomberg's investigations team.
Assange's youth as a hacker laid the foundation for him to start WikiLeaks in 2006. But what is WikiLeaks? It's a website that posts unfiltered, usually classified documents. What separates it from every other media outlet is that they have no editorial hierarchy. With a publication like the New York Times, information comes in, they take that information, package it, then disseminate it for the public to see. WikiLeaks, however, cuts out the middleman.
WikiLeaks gathers information, most of it given to them anonymously. So what they're doing is really very simple. They get the information in one end from who gives it to them and out the other with sometimes minimal interference. Julian Assange is the leader of that, the mastermind, the creator, and really, because he thinks of it as a journalistic enterprise, the editor-in-chief.
But every story starts with a source, and Assange has some unconventional sources.
Julian Assange does not hack as far as we know. He is the recipient of people who are either insiders who give him secret documents or hacked emails from a foreign power.
That's Eli Lake.
I am a columnist for Bloomberg.
And there was no source bigger for Assange than Chelsea Manning. He used to be known as U.S. soldier Bradley Manning. In 2010, Manning provided Assange and WikiLeaks with hundreds of thousands of leaked government documents. WikiLeaks quietly began releasing the documents in February of 2010, then made big headlines in April by posting what is now known as the collateral murder video.
Come on, fire!
It was a vivid, graphic video. It changed the debate on the Iraq War, and importantly, it put WikiLeaks on the map when they put it online, and they couldn't be ignored at that point.
And those leaks were just the beginning. They went on to post more than 90,000 leaked documents known as the Afghan war logs, 390,000 documents known as the Iraq war logs, and 250,000 private messages between diplomats called cables in what is now known as Cablegate. These leaks were met with very real ethical questions.
The problem with publishing those cables was that a number of confidential sources for U.S. diplomats who faced real danger when their names were exposed.
Then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton drove the point home that
every country, including the United States, must be able to have candid conversations about the people and nations with whom they deal.
Shortly after Cablegate, the Swedish government issued an arrest warrant for Assange on allegations of rape and molestation. He claimed the allegations were fabricated to get him extradited to the United States, a claim the U.S. government denied. Either way, Assange's next move was
to seek refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy, which really was the beginning of the new chapter in his life and what we're dealing with now, which is him being stuck in London.
What was supposed to be an office in an embassy is now Assange's self-imposed prison to this very day. But that doesn't mean he's slowed down. Since being trapped in the embassy, WikiLeaks has released files about Guantanamo Bay prisoners, Syrian political figures, and the draft to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And then came the 2016 U.S. election.
Thousands of leaked emails showed Democratic Party officials possibly plotting against Bernie Sanders in his race against Hillary Clinton.
Over the course of 68 days, WikiLeaks released 20,000 confidential Democratic National Committee emails. In terms of the presidential race, if you look right here, when Assange released the first batch of emails, Trump actually takes his first lead against Clinton.
I think we've had enough of the Clintons, in all fairness.
Once WikiLeaks started exposing secrets of the Democratic Party, Julian Assange became a hero to many on the right. Public opinion kind of flip-flopped.
WikiLeaks.
From the emails, we now know Hillary Clinton's campaign manager makes risotto, and also how the DNC squashed Bernie Sanders' campaign. One thing we don't know is who gave Assange the stolen emails in the first place.
Many leading Democrats say they suspect it was the Russians. They released an analysis from a private cybersecurity firm that had said it was the Russians.
But Assange claims
our source is not the Russian government, and it is not a state party.
So this is where we stand today. The public still doesn't know who provided the emails to WikiLeaks. Meanwhile, Assange is still running WikiLeaks and still releasing documents. In March 2017, he started publishing documents from the CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence called Vault 7.
The CIA, the agency charged with finding and keeping our top secrets, can't keep its own secrets.
As long as Assange has a connection to the world, no government secret will be too far from exposure.
Julian Assange is still in the embassy. Maybe he'll leave, maybe he won't. Kind of regardless, his work has been done. He's changed the way people think about their governments, about their own secrets, about their own hackability, and really the world has changed because of him.
Okay, day traders. Position opened on Bitcoin. As you can see, just right here. We sold short Bitcoin, so position opened short Bitcoin. So if you decided to copy this trade and if you decided to follow my trade, stay with me. We will go through this trade and we will close this trade, of course, in profit. Okay, well done, guys. If you want to find out more information about our strategy, please go to company.co.uk. We also provide webinar, so you can register for our webinar as well. All information you can find on this media broadcast streamer, or you can find on our website. I'll speak to you later, guys.
When it debuted, the 4G wireless we have today allowed people for the first time to hit the road and explore unknown places with only a smartphone for directions. When 5G arrives, it could enable driverless cars to take us there as well. 5G stands for 5th generation mobile networks or wireless systems. It's insanely fast and can accommodate a lot more connected devices. But the reason it's being called revolutionary is because 5G will allow connected devices to speak to each other as well as people.
Right now we're living in a world where really it's a one-way experience.
That's Bloomberg tech reporter Ian King.
The network talks to your phone, you look at your phone and access data, then you send something back to the network. What we're being told about 5G is that really for the first time we're going to see machines communicating with each other over mobile networks in a meaningful way.
5G could end up being 100 times faster than what we have now, with speeds that could reach 20 gigabits per second. In plain English, that means downloading a full-length HD movie in seconds. 5G will also increase total bandwidth, which we will need in order to accommodate the growing Internet of Things. We're talking about the class of devices like internet-connected refrigerators, thermostats, dog collars, but 5G will enable many, many more.
Things like your utility network factories where machines are just sat there not connected at all. Suddenly they're all going to be connected. Suddenly we're going to be able to have real-time monitoring. Other things like cars, like utility poles, like your light, the light poles.
But perhaps the biggest advance will be a huge reduction in communication lag time, known as latency. A network of driverless cars will need the speed of 5G to ping each other multiple times per second to avoid collisions. Near instantaneous data transfers could allow doctors to perform surgery remotely with a robotic scalpel. So how will all this work? First, you need to improve network density.
And that's just a fancy word for saying you put more towers out there. What we're being told is that's not actually the case with 5G.
The idea is 5G will not only use the existing mobile spectrum, but also tap into higher frequencies called millimeter waves. Millimeter waves can carry more data, but only travel short distances. This may mean you'll see a lot more of these base stations around town. And the new towers may have as many as 100 antenna ports, compared to about a dozen on 4G cell towers. So when will we get 5G? Getting 5G ready is expected to cost providers $275 billion over 7 years in the US alone. Look for the first 5G service to pop up in big cities sometime in 2019.
people think of Vladimir Putin, they think of capital P, power. And that's exactly the impression he creates. Whether it's physical power, firing different weapons, riding in various James Bond-esque modes of transportation, or tossing hapless opponents in judo. Or political power, ruling his own country with an iron fist, crushing his political opposition, or, most recently, being accused of meddling in foreign elections for his own benefit. This is how Vladimir Putin went from a poor, tough kid in Leningrad to a KGB spy to the very symbol of modern Russia. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin was born in 1952 in Leningrad, which is now St. Petersburg. His father was a factory foreman and his mother a homemaker. It is widely said that Putin's public-facing tough guy persona can be traced back to him getting into fights when he was younger, which paved the way for him to take up judo. After getting a law degree from Leningrad State University, Putin joined the KGB Foreign Intelligence Service. He spent 16 years in the KGB. When Putin returned to Russia, he began his political career.
He went to work for Anatoly Sobchak, who was then the mayor of St. Petersburg.
That's Leonid Bershidsky.
I'm a columnist at Bloomberg View.
Putin thrived in Sobchak's administration because
he was sort of considered pretty efficient city official at that time. He was very loyal to Sobchak.
So loyal and efficient that
he was noticed by Yeltsin's close circle.
And those people soon brought Putin over to Moscow to work in Yeltsin's administration, where he quickly climbed the political ladder.
Then, of course, he was promoted to Prime Minister of Russia.
That's Dmitry Trenin.
I am currently director of the Carnegie Moscow Center.
Around this time, Yeltsin and the people around him, the so-called family, decided that Putin would become Yeltsin's successor. And then this happened. The apartment bombings were carried out in 3 Russian cities, killing 293 people and injuring more than 1,000. Putin immediately accused Chechen separatists for the bombings and followed it up with action.
He was credited with having a very successful military campaign against the terrorists.
And it worked.
After that, he became an heir apparent in the eyes of the Russian people.
3 months later, Yeltsin resigned. And on his way out, a famous exchange.
He was getting into the car in the Kremlin, and the last words that he addressed to Putin before getting into his car was, "Take good care of Russia."
So Putin took over as president, and 3 months after that, won his first election. But just because Putin won the presidency, that didn't mean he had all the power. This is Michael McFall.
I was U.S. ambassador from 2012 to 2014. In the 1990s, there was a fire sale of all the things worth owning in Russia, and certain people,
the oligarchs,
did better than others in that fire sale, sometimes called privatization, and those people tended to be well connected with the Yeltsin regime, and they weren't Putin's friends. But they probably miscalculated, thinking that they could easily find a way to influence him. It became impossible almost from the start.
From that very moment, there was warfare between him and the oligarchs.
That's when Putin gave the oligarchs a choice. Putin's way?
Some of those people from the 90s managed to figure out a new way of dealing with Putin and have survived.
Or prison.
Others could not find common vision, and so they lost their assets.
Khodorkovsky once was Russia's richest person, worth $15 billion, but he ran afoul of President Vladimir Putin and spent a decade in prison.
With domestic power consolidated, Putin focused on restoring Russia's global influence.
Putin is the guy who believes in the expansionist Russian state. Georgia and Ukraine and all the other Soviet republics that split off when the Soviet Union fell apart, he still believes that they're traditional Russian satellites. A lot of his strategy is about keeping them in the orbit. That Yeltsin line, take good care of Russia, that's how he understands it.
And he used annexation and invasion, as well as oil, gas, and trade to keep former Soviet republics in Russia's orbit. In 2008, Putin's 2 terms were up, and he decided to step down as president. Dmitry Medvedev stepped in as president, and Putin went back to prime minister. But really,
Putin never left power. He pretty much continued running the country, and Medvedev was a bit of a figurehead.
There was actually a period of cooperation between Russia and the U.S. that benefited both countries during Medvedev's presidency.
Because Medvedev did not have the same negative attitude towards the West as Putin did.
But when Putin came back to run for a 3rd term, in the lead up to the 2012 election, it was widely believed that both the presidential and parliamentary elections were rigged, and Russians took to the streets. Putin blamed the protests squarely on America, and more specifically, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton.
He believes that she had sent, and this is his words, a signal to demonstrators.
Still, Putin won by a huge margin and set about crushing the protest movement immediately upon his return to the Kremlin. Over the next few years, Russia's economy tumbled. Putin annexed Crimea, leading to sanctions. The price of oil fell drastically. The ruble hit a new low, and America played down Russia's influence, with Obama calling Russia a regional power. Despite all of that, Putin's approval rating remained sky high, and then an opportunity for payback.
I think I'd get along very well with Vladimir Putin.
In 2016, there was one candidate who called Vladimir Putin very smart.
Trump exhibited tolerance towards Putin's actions annexing Crimea, and similar views on NATO and sanctions.
Secretary Clinton didn't support any of those views.
Even though Putin denies any wrongdoing,
U.S. elections.
Yes. The U.S. has accused Russia of being behind the leaking of 20,000 Democratic National Committee emails, which many say helped Trump beat Hillary Clinton in the presidential election. Which leaves us here, with the possibility of a President Putin until 2024, positioning Russia to be the world power he always imagined it should be.
Jack Ma is Asia's richest man and most recognizable business tycoon. He's the chairman of Alibaba, China's e-commerce giant and one of the 10 largest companies in the world. Yet he still wants more.
We know where we're going. We want to be the 5th largest economy.
Big words from the man some call Asia's Jeff Bezos. He's confident, he's charismatic, and he's definitely not the average CEO. This is how a poor school teacher went from the classroom to being one of the most influential multi-billionaires in the world. Ma was born in China's southeastern city Hangzhou in 1964. His parents were traditional musician storytellers. As a teenager, he started to learn English from foreign tourists after China opened up in the late 1970s.
And then for 9 years, Jack Ma hung around outside the Hangzhou Hotel, which is now called the Shangri-La. He would get up at 5 a.m. to talk to travelers.
That's Bloomberg technology reporter Lulu Chen.
And I cover China Internet for Bloomberg.
Ma failed China's National University entrance exam twice before being admitted to local teachers' college. He graduated in 1988. He applied for 30 jobs and got rejected, including from the fast food giant KFC.
When KFC came to China, come to us say, 24 people went for the job. 23 people were accepted. I was the only one guy.
Then Ma got a job at a local university and taught English there for about 5 years, earning just $15 a month. On the side, he started a translation company with several friends. During a company trip to the US in 1995, Ma had his first encounter with the internet at a friend's place in Seattle.
I searched the first word beer. I don't know why, because it's easy to spell, baby. And I see beers from Germany, beers from USA, beers from Japan, but there's no beer from China.
So he searched for the word China instead and still couldn't find anything. And that got him thinking. He wanted to build something that would put China on the world's map.
He started China Pages, a Yellow Pages-like website, but it didn't take off. Then Ma joined a government agency in Beijing to help set up a website. By 1999, the internet stock boom.
Okay, traders, let's play stop and profit for Bitcoin. We play stop and profit 0.2%. So 0.2% from 39,371. 100 will be 39,293. Okay, 39,293. Okay, stop and profit placed, and let me check if I will be able to place 39,371 minus 1%. Okay, no, I won't be able to place higher in our advantage stop and profit because it start move up. As you can see, Bitcoin kind of volatile these days, and it's difficult to find out the right position, right price that it will not jump straight away to fill your order. So if it will move lower, your stop and profit will stay in the right place. The broker gives kind of large spread between buy and sell. As you can see right now, they have bid you can sell for 38,963 and you can buy for 39,113. So as you can see, quite large spread. Let's wait, let's see what's going to happen. Anyway, we're already in profit, so this is good news, right? And let me, I'll try to put to place 0.5, 0.5%. 39,371 minus 0.5%, 39,175. Actually, yes, I will place stop and profit to 0.5%, 39,175. Just right here, okay? So we have 500 pounds in profit. 0.5% from the point we sold short Bitcoin, and if you decided to copy trade, and you have to copy everything until the end. Okay, so stay with me, and we'll close this trade in profit. Let's see, and I'll speak to you later, guys.
Ma's vision of growing Alibaba to be the world's 5th largest economy faces strong competition at home and abroad. It will require more than just naked ambition and charisma, but Ma is great at getting himself in the right place at the right time. So far, it's served him well.
Okay, traders, position closed on Bitcoin. We have 0.5%. In our case, we have £500 in profit, and it took us half an hour, okay, to make a profit. Position closed just right here. Well done, guys, all of you who decided to follow this trade and decided to sell short Bitcoin. Well done. You closed position right here, and as you can see, as soon as it filled the order, it moved down. Well, we trade on margin, so all I can say, we was controlling several million pounds of Bitcoin market, so this is no surprise. Anyway, it's good to be in profit. Okay, stay safe, and I'll speak to you later.
Thiel is a walking contradiction. He got his bachelor's and Juris Doctorate from Stanford, but speaks out about the horrors of higher education, saying college is
as corrupt as the Catholic Church was 500 years ago.
He's a staunch supporter of the free press, yet he bankrolled a lawsuit to bankrupt an independent media company.
But these were not journalists.
And most of all, he's an immigrant libertarian who's the most public supporter of Donald Trump in all of Silicon Valley.
What Trump represents isn't crazy, and it's not going away.
This is the story of how an openly gay, immigrant genius, libertarian billionaire went from tech contrarian to Silicon Valley's biggest Trump supporter. Peter Thiel was born on October 11, 1967 in Frankfurt, West Germany, to Suzanne and Klaus Thiel. Peter's family emigrated to Cleveland, Ohio when he was 1. An Ayn Rand devotee during his youth, Thiel attended Stanford University majoring in philosophy.
His Stanford experience shaped a really big part of who he decided to surround himself with.
That's Lizette Chapman.
And I cover technology and venture capital here at Bloomberg.
He and his Stanford friends made their first big splash in tech with PayPal. After selling to eBay for $1.5 billion, they would become known as the PayPal Mafia for each incredible success after PayPal. For Thiel, that began with an early, modest $500,000 investment in Facebook.
And in VC speak, Early means big risk, but also big reward. He turned that initial $500,000 investment into more than $1 billion in cash.
But Thiel was just getting started with Facebook, and he went on to make a whole bunch of wildly successful investments.
From SpaceX to Airbnb to one of the largest, most powerful companies in the United States, if not the world, and of course that's Palantir.
The incredibly controversial secretive data mining startup he founded with his colleagues from PayPal. It connects data silos and then allows non-technical people to search that information for patterns. Data like
financial information, feeds from video cameras, biometric details, passport information, flight manifest.
Palantir doesn't talk much about how they collect this data, who has access to it, or what they do with it. But they have contracts with
the Department of Homeland Security and the CIA and the Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission
and several other federal agencies. It's the richest company you've never heard of, valued at $20 billion. But there are plenty of obscenely wealthy people in Silicon Valley. What makes him different...
He's a complex ball of multiple contradictions.
Take college, for example. Even though college was extremely important for Thiel, there's something called the Thiel Fellowship.
In exchange for dropping out and a promise not to pursue college, Thiel would give them $100,000 each.
You basically tell people that if you get a diploma, you're saved. Otherwise you go to hell. You go to Yale or you go to jail.
Also, his relationship with the press.
Here's another contradiction. He's donated to free press initiatives, including the Committee to Protect Journalists.
But he also secretly spent tens of millions of dollars bankrolling a lawsuit filed by Hulk Hogan over the publication of a sex tape and bankrupting the independently run Gawker Media. Why did he do this? Because in 2007, one of Gawker Media's blogs, ValueAg, outed him as gay. And with the lawsuit, he
found an opportunity to get back at them by funding the lawsuit that Hulk Hogan was able to bring then, but he wouldn't have been able to do that without Thiel's money.
And finally, Thiel's biggest contradiction, his endorsement of Donald Trump.
When he was asked about his support for Trump, he was surprised at the outrage that came with it from many of his colleagues in Silicon Valley. He didn't want more of the establishment.
No matter how crazy this election seems, it is less crazy than the condition of our country.
After briefly supporting Carly Fiorina in the primaries, Thiel pivoted to Trump, donating $1.25 million to Trump and his associated super PACs in October 2016. And he didn't just help Trump financially. He gave a full-throated keynote speech supporting Trump at the Republican National Convention.
I'm not a politician, but neither is Donald Trump. He is a builder, and it's time to rebuild America.
And when Trump was finally elected, Thiel was given the reins to an enormous amount of power.
And I want to thank you, man. You have a very special guy.
He was named the transitional advisor. And in that role, he did a lot of interviewing and a lot of vetting to fill hundreds of cabinet positions and different jobs within the administration.
But it turns out, Thiel's support isn't unconditional.
Talking to people who spend time with him, I have also heard that he is no longer a great supporter of Trump.
It was reported that Thiel was unhappy with the direction of Trump's presidency. Ever since, he's been mum, making no public appearances, no statements, and staying out of the spotlight altogether. Although there have been suggestions that Trump could tap Thiel for a top intelligence post or ambassadorship, there's no indication he'd accept.
He's described his relationship with politics as schizophrenic. He gets really involved, and then he runs away as fast as possible.
Whether Thiel takes a new position or simply continues as a board director at Facebook and Palantir, at just 50 years old, he's primed to wield some serious influence in technology and politics for decades to come.
2016 was again the hottest year on record, and the previous 17 years have seen our 16 most scorching. Scientists overwhelmingly agree. Global warming is the culprit. And it's just getting started. Ice caps, extreme weather, wildfires, droughts, and the hits keep coming. What are we doing about it? In 2015, the world took its boldest step yet to stem climate change with a historic accord in Paris. But now comes the hard part. Nations must change energy policies and invest huge amounts of money, and they will likely do it without the United States. President Donald Trump announced on June 1st that the U.S. would withdraw from the accord.
The reality is that withdrawing is in America's economic interest and won't matter much to the climate.
Here's the situation. Decades in the making, the Paris Agreement united the U.S., China, and more than 190 other nations in a push to limit fossil fuel pollution. The UN-sponsored plan secured pledges to cut greenhouse gases, the emissions that trap heat in the Earth's atmosphere, in an effort to avoid the rising seas and other environmental disasters that climate models predict. But even if all pledges are met, the globe is expected to warm by as much as 3.4 degrees Celsius this century, more than the UN target of well below 2 degrees. Meeting the Paris Agreement means that governments will have to offer more incentives for clean energy, scale back support for fossil fuels, make emissions more costly, and reduce deforestation. It's estimated that the deal will require $13.5 trillion of spending through 2030. Here's the argument. Unlike past climate pacts such as the Kyoto Protocol, each country set its own Paris targets and then promised to revisit and improve them. The U.S. was primed to play a lead role in climate change, but Trump's energy independence executive order reverses Obama-era rules and directives put in place to combat climate change, and expands production of coal, the dirtiest fossil fuel. The resulting policies threaten the global fight against climate change. Without the U.S. commitment to emissions reduction, other countries may join it in abandoning the Paris Agreement. This could make it almost impossible and even more expensive down the line to stop climate change. Optimists argue that the shift to a lower carbon future is already underway. Businesses, cities, and U.S. states, such as California, are already investing in wind and solar and taking other steps to make it work.
I've actually been called an environmentalist, if you can believe that.
There's an inherent attraction to light and being human. And I think on a very deep psychological level, light is this way in which we experience the energy surrounding us in a very personal manner. My name is Matt Dilling. I'm the founder of Light Bright Neon Studio, and we manufacture, produce, and restore neon works of art and design. Origins of the creative content of a lot of the work at Light Bright comes from a variety of sources. Sometimes people come with a napkin sketch. Some people come with an Adobe Illustrator file. And we have a whole design team who then we kind of work together to help create layouts of what it might look like. And scale it up and create a paper template using a pen plotter. And that paper template actually becomes our guide for what we're going to bend the neon to. We take from the office into the glass shop. We pick out the right size tubing with the right color for the right size project. From there, we heat up the glass tubing. The torches heat the glass well in excess of 1,000 degrees in order for it to get into its molten state. We heat up and bend the glass tubing to match the template. One of our chandeliers has over 100 different bends in it. So each one of those bends has to be marked for a heated up bend. We also have to allow the glass to cool between the bends so that the next area can be worked on and heated up in its own unique fashion. It turns into spaghetti, and then we have to make sure that that spaghetti lines back up and cools to the template. We use a blow hose to connect our mouth to the tube, create a volume that's closed, and we can control the pressure in there with our mouth. There's just a variety of challenges that come up inherently in working with glass. Glass can crack due to stress, and sometimes you'll just have a batch that all it wants to do when it gets near a torch is crack. After we've bent various components, we have to go in using the crossfire or the hand torch and actually weld all of those pieces together. The last step on that is then to weld on electrodes onto either end. Each one of those steps is very, very specific. I draw inspiration from so many different experiences. It's hard to come up with one thing that's particular, but one of the ways that I really am able to connect with the creative is to float. Floating is a similar experience to meditation, to psychedelics. Going into a blackened room and laying out in a body of water and salt that's heated to your body temperature, and it allows for all sort of external stimulation to fall away. And your internal world really begins to bubble up and manifest. You really get to experience a different relationship to your mind. I think I work with neon because I can't not work with it. It's so challenging and so rewarding. And those things are so intertwined that there's no way of separating it out. I've learned so much and continue to learn so much by working with it. I find so much inspiration in working with it, and I just continue to experience new and different things through the medium. It's that close to me at this point. Once the neon tube is completed, we have to hook it up to our manifold for bombarding. The manifold is opened, a vacuum is drawn. We check the tube for leaks with our Tesla coil. We close the tube back off, and we heat it up using a very large and powerful transformer. As the tube is heated up, it releases anything that's not inert inside the tube, and we evacuate that out. We introduce the gas into it, and we seal the tube off, sealing into that tube whatever gas we introduced into it. think my favorite part of making a neon light is when I see it lit up for the first time. Different gases, when electrified, emit different wavelengths of light. Neon gas is this very bright orange, fiery red color. Argon gas creates a very intense blue, but that light output that is produced can then be expressed in a different wavelength by coating the inside of the tubes with a phosphor coating that takes that one wavelength of light and emits a different wavelength. We bring it over to the aging table where we hook it up to an age-in transformer and allow it to settle, age the gas in that we've introduced to it. There's always a stray particle of something left inside the tube. But that time that the oxide coating can act to scrub whatever is left inside the tube while things are getting settled into place. Once the tubes are aged in, we move on to our process of assembling two halves of the fixture together in a jig, gluing up the center of the fixture to its spindle. Once the adhesive dried, we would connect the wires from the fixture together into a transformer, and we turn on power and it lights up. Part of what we love about what we do here is that we try and put out into the world the kind of things that we'd like to see. I still am surprised when it lights up. I'm still excited when I get to see it illuminated. There's an ineffable quality to it. To me, is this insight into the inner workings of the universe. It literally is. It's a way of looking at what is surrounding us in the cosmos in a new light.